My son told the man standing beside him that I was the cleaning woman. Not a cleaner, the cleaning woman. He said it quietly, with the small, practiced smile of someone used to smoothing over inconveniences, and then he turned back to his conversation as though I had already left the room. I was still standing there. I was standing there, holding his wife Claudine's evening bag, and the folder of speaking notes she had asked me to carry because her gown had no pockets. We were in the lobby of the Fairmont Royal York, on the evening of the Toronto Civic Excellence Gala. My son Martin was receiving the Urban Visionary Award. The man beside him was a senior partner at a Vancouver real estate investment firm, and I, at 67 years old, in a plain charcoal blazer I had worn to a dozen board meetings, had just become the cleaning woman. I did not correct him. What I said instead was, "Martin has always needed someone behind him keeping things in order." Claudine looked at the floor. My granddaughter Harper, who had just arrived from the coat check, went very still. Martin laughed. The laugh he used when something had gone wrong and he needed to buy time, and steered the investor toward the ballroom. The moment closed around itself like water over a stone. I had been Martin Weston's mother for 42 years. Tonight, apparently, that was too complicated to explain. I was born the third child of a Slovak immigrant family in Hamilton, Ontario. My father worked at the steel mill. My mother took in alterations from the neighbors. We were not poor in the way that makes a good story. We were poor in the quiet, practical way that means you never go without heat, but you also never stop thinking about the bill. At 22, I married Robert Weston, an electrician from Sudbury, who had the kind of laugh that made strangers feel welcome at a table. At 26, I had Martin. At 34, Robert died of a cardiac event on a Thursday afternoon while replacing wiring in a commercial kitchen downtown. 1 week he was planning a canoe trip in Algonquin. The next, I was calling his mother from a hospital hallway. He left me a $75,000 life insurance payout, a used Civic, and a 6-year-old who asked for weeks afterward why Daddy didn't come home for supper. I took the first work I could find. For nearly 4 years, I cleaned rooms at the Harborfront Hotel, beginning at 5:30 in the morning, 6 days a week. I changed sheets, scrubbed bathrooms, and learned how thoroughly a person could be looked through while standing 3 feet away. Guests negotiated business deals and argued about divorces while I emptied their bins. A few thanked me. Most did not look at my face. Some left a couple of dollars on the nightstand and spoke to each other as though that settled the question of whether I existed. "My badge," said Viola. That was the name that belonged to the woman doing the work. The company started because of a leaking dishwasher. A dental clinic on King Street called the hotel asking if any staff did private cleaning. Their regular service had stopped showing up. I said yes before I finished understanding the question. I owned a mop, a bucket, and a vacuum that smelled faintly of burning when it ran too long. I cleaned that clinic for 3 months before the dentist mentioned me to a physiotherapy practice. The physio mentioned me to an accounting firm. The accounting firm had 7 offices across the city. By the time Martin was 12, Weston Facility Solutions had 14 employees. By the time he left for university, we had over 200. We cleaned offices, medical centers, school board buildings, and 5 hotels across southern Ontario. I did not lose my understanding of the work when I stopped doing it myself. I knew which chemicals damaged stone floors. I knew how long a proper washroom turnaround took. I knew what happened to staff retention when you paid people fairly and what happened when you didn't. We paid fairly. We promoted from within. We offered paid training for supervisors and a health benefits package that I was prouder of than any contract we ever won. Martin grew up inside that company. He did homework on the folding table in my first office on Dufferin Street. He rode in the supply van on school holidays. He knew by name the 3 women who brought food when I had my gallbladder out, and the operations supervisor who taught him to drive stick shift in the parking lot behind our warehouse on a rainy Saturday morning. As a teenager, he told his teachers his mother ran a cleaning company. He said it without any qualifier, the same way another kid might say their mother was an engineer. He wrote in his university application essay that watching me build something from nothing had taught him to see possibility in overlooked places. Somewhere between that essay and his 40th birthday, the story changed. Martin became a property developer. He was genuinely good at it. He had a rare ability to walk into a tired building and describe, in specific terms, what it could become. A shuttered textile mill in the West End became a mixed-use community space with affordable units on 3 floors. A closed cinema in Scarborough became a market hall and performing arts center. He did real work. I respected the work. What I could not respect was the story he built around it. When Martin needed capital for his first project, no bank would take the risk on an unknown developer. I lent him $350,000 at a fair interest rate, properly documented, registered as a secured loan against the property. He repaid it over 6 years. When his second development ran short, I invested another $180,000 in exchange for a small equity stake. That project was profitable, and we both made money from it. I did not give him a career. I gave him 2 concrete opportunities with clear terms, and he turned them into something real. That was an honest story. It was also, apparently, not the story he needed to tell. Profiles in the Globe and Mail described Martin as a self-made developer whose single mother upbringing had given him no financial safety net. One piece said he had entered the industry with nothing but drive and personal savings. His mother was alive. Her $350,000 had been very real. I raised it once over coffee at my kitchen table. He smiled in the way he had learned from Claudine, patient, slightly tired, as though I had misread something quite simple. Journalists simplify, Mum. It's not worth fighting. The point is what I built. Then say that. You can describe what you built without making me disappear. He kissed my forehead and changed the subject. I let him. I told myself it was generosity. What I was actually doing was making it easier for him to keep going. Claudine was the architect of the revised version. She had a natural gift for shaping perception, and she applied it to Martin's biography the way a good editor applies a red pen, removing anything that complicated the main line. The supply van disappeared. My loan became early backing from family. The warehouse where Weston Facility Solutions had operated for 20 years became, in Claudine's language, a neglected industrial property Martin had identified for future development. When I said anything, she spoke about clean narratives. People connect with a clear journey, she told me once, after cutting off an anecdote I was telling at a charity function. Too much context muddies the picture. The context is true, I said. She smiled as though I had proven her point. The sharpest moment came at Martin's 45th birthday. Claudine had arranged a printed timeline of his life on foam boards in their dining room. Convocation, wedding, first project, awards. One photograph showed Martin at about 10 years old beside the Weston Facility Solutions van. The caption read, "Martin learns the value of hard work," accompanying his mother on her cleaning rounds. I stood in front of that board for a long time. By the time Martin was 10, I had 31 employees and contracts with 3 school boards. The van was a company vehicle. I was running payroll, managing supplier accounts, and negotiating our first municipal cleaning tender. I was not accompanying anyone on cleaning rounds. I was running a business. I found Martin near the cake table. "The caption isn't right," I said. He glanced at it. "It's close enough, Mum." I owned the company by then. I had 30 employees. "It's a party display, not a corporate filing." "Then, why include it?" He looked around at the room full of guests. "Because people respond to the idea of struggle. It makes the rest of the story feel earned." I wanted to ask whose struggle had been quietly borrowed for someone else's narrative. Instead, I walked outside. My granddaughter Harper found me on the back porch. She was 21 then, doing her second year in a community arts program at Ryerson. "The caption is wrong," she said. She'd read it without my saying anything. "It's his birthday." She gave me a look that reminded me of Robert. Facts don't expire on birthdays. By the time I sold Weston Facility Solutions, we employed 430 people across Ontario. A national facilities management firm based in Calgary made the acquisition. After taxes and a careful review with my financial advisor, my net position was just above $7 million. Martin knew the sale had been significant. He did not know the exact figure, and I did not offer it. I still lived in the same semi-detached house in Parkdale I had owned for 23 years. I drove a 7-year-old Subaru. I kept a box of grocery coupons in the kitchen drawer beside the kettle. The warehouse was different. It was a mid-sized brick building on a stretch of the lakeshore that had been quietly transforming for years. Robert had helped me paint the original office in there the summer before he died. Martin had taken his first steps on its concrete floor on a Saturday morning when I'd had no childcare and brought him along. The first 3 employees I ever hired had signed their contracts at a folding table near the loading doors. When the neighborhood changed, the cafes, the converted condos, the bike path along the waterfront, the warehouse changed with it. A recent independent appraisal put it at approximately $3.2 million. Martin wanted it. He called his project Harborside Commons. Boutique hotel, rooftop bar, ground floor market hall. His drawings were beautiful. His plan was not ready. The project needed over $18 million in financing. He had interested investors, a Vancouver firm called Prentice Sorrell Capital, who needed confirmation that he controlled the site before they would commit. I was open to discussing a fair sale or a long-term lease once the financing was in place, the plans were complete, and community impact provisions had been properly considered. I was not willing to transfer the property on a promise and a dinner. Martin treated my caution as bureaucratic delay. Claudine treated it as a personal affront. Claudine had, I would discover later, already told the Prentice Sorrells team that the property transfer was a pending family matter, expected to resolve after the gala. 3 weeks before the evening at the Fairmont, the executive director of the Toronto Civic Excellence Council called me. Her name was Director Mensah, and she asked if I had a few minutes. She asked about Weston Facility Solutions, about the vocational training fund I had set up for newcomers entering the building services industry, about the 4 community gardens I had quietly funded in the Dufferin and Weston Road corridors over the past decade. I assumed she was gathering background on Martin. Then she asked me to keep a secret. The council, she explained, gave an annual Founders Award, not publicly listed in the program, to someone whose work had shaped the city from the ground up without fanfare. Former employees of Weston Facility Solutions had nominated me. The council had spoken with 7 of them, including one woman who had started cleaning offices at minimum wage and now owned her own facility management company in Brampton. This isn't only about the scale of what you built, Director Mensah said. It's about what you made possible for other people. I almost declined. I have never been comfortable in the center of a room. She said, let the people you employed put your name in the program. I agreed. On one condition, Martin would not know until the presentation. I wanted his evening to belong to his own work without any shadow of what came after. She promised. Martin called 2 days later. Could I come over the morning of the gala? Claudine's seamstress had canceled. Their regular housekeeper had called in sick, her child had a fever. Harper was arriving from a workshop in Mississauga and wouldn't get there until late afternoon. Could I bring a sewing kit? Of course I could. I had planned to go home and change before the evening. I had a dark green dress hanging on my bedroom door, bought specifically for the occasion. What I did not plan for was Claudine calling at 2 in the afternoon, in tears, because the florist had delivered the centerpiece arrangements to the wrong ballroom. The car service had misrouted Martin's presentation materials, and the bodice seam of her gown had split along 6 inches. I put on a charcoal blazer and black trousers, the kind of thing I wore to board meetings, and drove to their house in Rosedale. For the next 90 minutes, I repaired Claudine's gown, called the hotel to confirm the presentation materials had arrived at the right room, located Martin's missing cufflinks, and blotted a red wine stain from the entry hall runner. At 5:40, I said I needed to leave to change. Martin checked his watch. There's no time. The car is coming in 8 minutes. I can meet you there. It'll look strange if we arrive separately. Come with us. Claudine came down the stairs in the repaired gown, looked at my blazer and trousers and said, Viola, that's perfectly fine for a supporting table. I have an assigned seat. She blinked. You received a separate invitation? Yes. Martin adjusted his pocket square. It's probably a general sponsor placement. Come with us. We can't be late. I thought of Director Mensah and her request for secrecy. I wore the charcoal blazer. On the way to the hotel, Claudine asked if I could carry her evening bag and Martin's folder of speaking notes. Her hands were occupied with her wrap and a small gift for the council chair. That was how I walked into the lobby of the Fairmont Royal York. Plain clothes, carrying other people's things, looking exactly like what I had been 30 years ago. I was not embarrassed by the resemblance. Martin was. The investor found us near the entrance. He was tall, mid-50s, the kind of man who scanned a room while shaking your hand. He congratulated Martin and then looked toward me. And this must be your mother. You mentioned she had quite a history in the hospitality industry. An open door. Martin could have walked through it. Instead, he looked at my blazer, at Claudine's bag in my hands, at the people nearby. This is Viola, he said. She helps us around the house. The man nodded with the polite distance people reserve for service staff at events like this. You must be very proud of Martin tonight. I looked at my son. He did not meet my eyes. Martin has always needed someone behind him keeping things in order, I said. Claudine's grip tightened on her wrap. Harper, arriving from the coat check, went completely still. Martin laughed and moved the investor toward the ballroom. Harper turned to me. Did he just say you were? It was a misunderstanding, Claudine said quickly. He told that man she cleans your house. She is standing here holding your bag. Harper, Claudine's voice dropped. Not tonight. I handed Claudine her bag. You can manage this now. She took it. A few people nearby noticed the transfer. I did not make a performance of it, I didn't need to. At the registration desk, a volunteer found my name and called Director Mensah over from the ballroom door. The director came at once, took both my hands, and said that my table was at the front and that a green room was available before the final presentation. Martin heard her and turned around. Director Mensah excused herself and returned to the ballroom. Martin looked at me. What final presentation? We'll find out later. Viola. That was Claudine, with the tone she used when she wanted compliance wrapped in calmness. What have you arranged? Nothing. She knew your name. People sometimes know the housekeeper, I said. Harper made a sound that was almost a laugh. My table was at the front of the ballroom, alongside former council chairs, a retired city planner, and two women I recognized from the building services industry. The Prentice Sorrel investor was seated across the aisle. When he saw me at the front table, his expression shifted, in a way Martin would not have wanted to witness. I did not rescue my son from that confusion. Harper moved her place card from Martin and Claudine's table to sit beside me. Claudine noticed, she said, under her breath, that Harper's seat was with the family. Harper said, I am with family. The speeches began. The first presenter spoke about urban renewal in older industrial corridors. Several of Martin's completed projects appeared on the screen. I applauded each one sincerely. He had done real work. That was never in question. When Martin's name was called for the Urban Visionary Award, I stood with the room. He spoke well. He thanked his team, his investors, the city councilors who had championed adaptive reuse policy. He thanked Claudine for building a life alongside the work. Then he described his childhood. I grew up watching my mother work hard every day, he said. She taught me that no job is beneath you. She also taught me to believe in something better. The room turned toward me. Martin smiled in my direction, as though the gesture had concluded something. He did not say I had built a company. He did not say he had borrowed $350,000 of my money to launch his first project. He did not say whether the woman who cleaned hotel rooms was still alive or what had become of her. The applause was long and warm. I clapped with everyone else. Afterward, the investor leaned toward Martin across the aisle. That woman at the front table, she's your mother? Martin's color changed. Yes, I misspoke earlier. You said she worked at your house. Claudine leaned forward. Viola has always been part of our household. Martin simply meant that she's very involved in family life. The investor nodded without agreeing. 2 more awards were presented. Dessert arrived. Coffee was poured. Then the host returned to the microphone. Our final honor tonight is not listed in your program, she said. The Founders Award recognizes someone whose work shaped this city's workforce and neighborhoods before most of us knew to pay attention. Martin turned toward Claudine. Tonight's recipient came to Toronto with very little and worked in the hospitality industry for years before building one of Ontario's most respected facility services companies. At its height, Weston Facility Solutions employed over 400 people, many of them newcomers who went on to build businesses and careers of their own. The room became quiet. Harper reached for my hand. She has funded vocational training, community gardens, and, without seeking a single line of credit in the press, helped restore 4 community centers in underserved neighborhoods across this city. Martin's shoulders stopped moving. Several projects recognized at this gala tonight received early support from her, though she never asked for acknowledgement. The host looked directly at the front table. Please welcome Viola Weston. For 1 full second, no one moved. Then Harper stood up. The 2 women from the building services industry rose beside her, the retired city planner, the former council chair, and then the room in expanding sections until everyone was standing. I walked to the stage in my charcoal blazer. The host placed a bronze medallion in my hands. Behind us, the screen showed a photograph of my first office on Dufferin Street. Me, standing beside a vacuum, and 3 women in blue uniforms, all of us grinning because we had just signed our second school board contract and didn't yet know how far it would go. Then it showed the Lakeshore warehouse. Martin looked up sharply. The host described the building as Weston Facility Solutions, longtime operations hub, and thanked me for preserving it through years of neighborhood change. Then she noted, simply, that the property remained under my company's ownership. A murmur moved through the ballroom. Martin turned toward the Prentice Sorrel investor. The investor was looking at the screen. I had not asked the host to mention ownership. It was a matter of public record, part of the background the council had verified. The truth had come into the room without any help from me. I had prepared a few short paragraphs. I left them in my pocket. I spent years being invisible while standing in plain sight, I said. The work was honest. Being unseen was the part that cost something. The ballroom was completely still. When I started my company, I wanted every worker's name to matter, not just the name on the award or the quote in the business section. The name on the schedule. The name on the paycheck. I thanked the women who had been with me from the beginning. I thanked Robert, who had seen the possibility in me before I saw it myself. I thanked Harper for being the kind of person who moves her seat. Then, I looked at Martin. My son has built things I'm genuinely proud of, I said. He had help, as most of us do. I hope everyone in this room remembers that saying so doesn't make the work smaller, it makes it honest. I walked back to my seat. Harper hugged me before I sat down. Across the aisle, the Prentice Sorrel investor was watching Martin with an expression that had lost all its social warmth. Martin found me before I reached the lobby. He asked quietly if we could speak privately. Claudine followed. So did Harper, who showed no sign of leaving. In a small meeting room off the main corridor, Martin asked why I had told the investor there was no property transfer agreement. Because there isn't one, I said. We've been in discussions for 8 months. Discussion is not a deed. Claudine stepped forward. She was controlled, but only just. The Prentice Sorrel team has been working from a project timeline that shows site acquisition as a pending family arrangement. You knew this project depended on that building. I knew you were discussing a project. I did not know you were representing my property as committed collateral in investor materials. Martin walked to the window and back. Do you understand what tonight may have cost me? Do you understand what introducing me as your housekeeper cost you? Harper said it before I could. Martin turned on her. This is not about one sentence at a cocktail reception. This is $18 million in financing. Then it should have been built on the truth, I said. Claudine opened her clutch and removed a folded document. I recognized the gesture. It was the movement of someone who had come to the evening expecting this conversation. The document proposed a sale of the Lakeshore property to Martin's development company for $1.6 million, with payment deferred until construction financing closed. The building had been appraised at $3.2 million. The letter also granted his company immediate permission to reference the site in investor materials. I read it once. Who set this price? Martin said the building required significant environmental assessment and structural remediation. Where is the independent appraisal documenting that? He said it was in progress. Then this letter is based on a number someone chose before the evidence existed. Claudine exhaled. Viola, this is not one of your service contracts. No, it's a $3.2 million piece of property, which is exactly why it deserves more care, not less. I handed the paper back. I won't sign. Martin's voice went flat. Why did you even come tonight? You invited me. You came in that blazer. You accepted a secret award. You corrected the property story in front of my investor. Don't pretend none of that was intentional. I looked at him for a moment. I came in this blazer because I spent 90 minutes repairing your wife's gown and solving problems in your house. I walked into this hotel carrying her bag. You saw me doing it and decided it was easier to say I was household help. Something moved across his face. Not anger, something beneath the anger. Then Claudine spoke, and the moment sealed over. Any future discussion of the Lakeshore property goes through my property manager and my lawyer, I said. You are not to use my name, my company's history, or any assumption about my estate in your investor materials. Martin laughed, short and hollow. My estate. So that's what this is really about. It is now. Sunday afternoon, Martin came to my house alone. He brought the bronze medallion, which Harper had accidentally taken home in the confusion. He placed it on the kitchen table. He sat in the chair Robert used to sit in. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he apologized, not for the property dispute, for the introduction. I told Hendricks, the investor, months ago, that you liked staying active, that you helped different families out. When I saw you standing in the lobby holding Claudine's bag, it was easier to let him keep thinking that than to explain everything from the beginning in front of people. You could have said, "This is my mother." He looked at the table. Yes. Why didn't you? He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. Because the version of myself I'd been selling didn't have room for you in it. And I didn't know how to change that in 30 seconds in a hotel lobby. That was the most honest sentence he had said to me in years. I told him it was a start. My lawyer's office. First thing Monday morning. We were not there to discuss the estate. We were there to correct the record. A formal notice went to Martin's company and to Prentice Sorrell Capital, confirming that the Lakeshore property remained solely under my holding company's control, that no sale or transfer had been agreed to, and that any future use of the building in financial materials required my written consent. The notice was not an accusation, it was a correction. Then we discussed what a fair arrangement might actually look like. I was willing to consider a genuine sale at the appraised value, or a long-term ground lease that allowed the development to proceed while my company retained ownership of the land. Either option was real. Neither resembled the document Claudine had produced from her clutch. The Prentice Sorrell team paused their involvement for 6 weeks while Martin submitted a revised proposal. It was slower, less elegant, and considerably more honest. The site was listed at fair value. Community provisions, affordable commercial spaces on the ground floor, a living wage commitment for all building staff, were written in as conditions, not decorative afterthoughts. One investor withdrew, a smaller one entered. The rooftop bar was removed. The hotel became 30 rooms instead of 60. Real development looked nothing like an awards night announcement. It was slow, uncertain, and full of unglamorous adjustments. Martin accepted the ground lease in the end. He told me once, during one of our Sunday evening phone calls, that he felt like he was building on someone else's foundation. I told him most people were, whether they admitted it or not. He was quiet. Then he said that was probably fair. Harborside Commons opened 21 months after the gala. The warehouse walls were left exposed throughout the lobby. A section near the entrance displayed photographs from Weston Facility Solutions operating years. Every person in every photograph was named, not in small print at the base of a placard, but in full at eye level on individual labels. Martin had asked my permission before including the photographs. That was the first time in years he had asked my permission for anything involving my company's history. At the opening, a journalist asked him how the project had come together. He was standing beside me. "The building belongs to my mother," he said. "She built her company here for 20 years. I wanted this site before I had earned the right to it. The project exists in the form it does because she required us to build something we could actually defend." He did not look diminished for saying it. He looked, for the first time in a long time, like the person I had raised. In the lobby, Hendricks from Prentice Sorrell found me near the photograph wall and crossed the room. "Mrs. Weston," he said, "I owe you an apology from that evening at the Fairmont." "You understood what you were told," I said. He looked at the photograph beside us. 3 women in blue uniforms, a dented vacuum, the concrete floor of this exact building in winter light. I should have done my own due diligence before I assumed. Most people trust that a man in a tuxedo at a gala has already confirmed what he's claiming. "Yes," he said, "that's precisely the assumption your son relied on." I looked at the photograph, at the 3 women, at the particular quality of light that came through the loading dock doors in January, which I had not thought about in years and suddenly remembered perfectly. The work had always been honest. I had only ever needed people to stop rewriting it.